I'm Peggy Pirro, and this is Food From Here. Sponsored by Swerka and More, working to enhance opportunities for independent living and a better quality of life for seniors in our community. Find out more at swerka.org. Over the past 25 episodes of Food From Here, we've met food producers and chefs and food writers and foragers, many of whom have been encouraged, assisted, mentored, or supported in some way by my guests today. I've called them the power couple of our local food community, and I first spoke to them on Food From Here individually early in Season 1. I've asked them to return as a team for this closing episode of Season 3 to share a bit about how their work and their role in the community has grown and changed since they started their farm here in southern Indiana. Roger and Mary Winstead own and operate Beautiful Edibles, a 2-acre vegetable farm in suburban Moore County, where they grow crops for local chefs and retail outlets and for sale directly to customers on the online marketplace Local Source. We talk about the challenges inherent to small specialty farmers, the realities of our commodity-based food system, and the lack of strong infrastructure. Those are perennial issues, and growers can't ignore them. But I think what I liked most about this conversation is the window it offers into how a dedication to one's craft and to getting people to work together can create something meaningful and necessary and valuable. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Roger and Mary Winstead of Beautiful Edibles. Roger and Mary, welcome to Food From Here.
Hey,
Hello.
Good to be here.
The last time we talked, it was in our first season. I think it was episodes 2 and 4. So it's been a year, and a lot has happened. A lot happens every year, but this year in particular seems to feel a little busy. So let's catch up. What have you been focused on?
So it's been a busy year. You're correct. This has been a year of growth and expansion for both Beautiful Edibles and Local Source. We had an opportunity to get 3 used cold storage units for Local Source and the farm, and those were secured early in the year, I guess summertime. But they're not fully installed yet. Mm-hmm. So we've had a year of trying to figure out how to grow business to be able to fund installing the cold storage. But we need the cold storage because business is growing, and especially the wholesale side of the business. And that's something that we really focused on this year. We kind of pulled back on production for us as a farm and concentrated more on wholesale accounts, building those wholesale accounts, working with new wholesale customers. And then it's really been a kind of a booming time for restaurants. I know that we've seen some restaurants close down, but we've had 2 or 3 really good accounts that have done well this year.
And new accounts.
And some new accounts. So that's been not necessarily a surprise, because a lot of the chefs that we're seeing doing this, we're not surprised to see them making great strides. And the fact of the matter is people still like to go out to eat.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
And people who can afford to go out to eat still go out to eat, even in times that are economically challenging. And then we still find that there's a lot of people who they want to eat clean food. And so I think we're finding that that's still a trend for people to eat local clean food.
When you say not focusing so much on production at the farm, specifically what are you referring to?
The everyday putting seed in the ground. We've kind of drew back a little bit. So this year...
A lot less greens.
And one entire planting of the tomatoes that we normally do. So we usually planted out about 800 to 900 tomatoes. This year we were at 750, I think it was. So scaled back a little bit from what we were doing. That's about 200 bed feet shorter than what we'd done in the past. About 150 plants down through there.
You take your cues from the restaurants, what they want you to grow, as opposed to what you think will sell on a retail basis?
Somewhat. We do have standard accounts. Usually we'll sit down during the off season and talk to those accounts about what they liked, what they want more of. And then we try to do everything on, it's an informal contract basis. We're working towards having more formal arrangements, which is the way we should be doing things, knowing exactly what we're producing for who, and having that product sold before we put the seed in the ground, before we order supplies. I mean, good businesses should, conduct that way. So we're trying to be more proactive on that, and that was kind of the direction that we went. And then somewhat labor was an issue this year. It's been a challenge, and we just decided that we weren't going to fight it. We just decided, because greens is one of the most labor-intensive products.
Are you talking lettuces or greens like collards and kale and such?
All of those. But the lettuce it's very much rinse and repeat. We are constantly planting, seeding, transplanting, cutting, washing, bagging, and start over again. So that takes monitoring all those little seedlings that are in the ground, all the ones that have to go out in the ground, and then all the ones that are ready to be harvested. So that was one of the areas where we really said at the end of March, then we're done for the season. Normally we would try to push it again into April and May. This year it was pretty warm, and it was a good time to just take a break. And then this fall, instead of ramping right back up again, we finished our tomato crops up before we started on the greens again. So that's unusual for us. We're usually dancing that dance of putting crops out, finishing the season on another crop, and having those two overlap. And we just decided the shoulder seasons weren't going to be so intense for us this year on our production schedule.
I think I would be really tired of that constant thinking of this is coming out, this is in, this needs to go in next, and I need to get this started, and that would tire me out.
And weather dependent. A lot of things you have no control over. And it was a really dry summer. So if there was anything to be done, you had to water. I think that was one of the factors that said, hey, and I think the weather has changed a little bit and gotten warmer. It was a warm summer.
It was a warm spring.
Warm spring.
We were in the 80s several times right at the 1st of March.
That's not good for lettuce.
April.
No.
April, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was already difficult right at the beginning.
So are you able to grow what you like to grow? Are you able to put out things that you think people might like but you're not sure about? How much chance do you take on what you're growing?
Well, from the very beginning, we tried to do something that was profitable. We started by growing tomatoes and lettuce, and then we found that we were buying most of our produce for our house. We decided to be a little bit more conscious about ourselves and what it was that we wanted to eat. And so we started putting in more product that we would eat, especially because when we started growing for the CSA, we grew a lot of things that other people didn't want. And so then we had to eat them. So that's when we kind of alternated, what we were putting out with new crops, trying things, and then picking out what we liked. Because if it was going to be something that was going to have to be on our plate, we better like it. Or if we're going to have to preserve it and put it away, then it better be something that's easy enough to preserve and use during the winter season. Because we do preserve quite a bit. That's one of the other reasons why we decided to kind of pull back on some of the more intense production, because we wanted to be able to preserve tomatoes and do things like that during the season too.
Yeah, hard to preserve lettuce.
It is. It can be done, and especially the heavier greens. We've done a lot of that in just like soups and casseroles and things that we could put away. Yeah. Lettuce, not so much, but.
Did you do the CSA this year?
We did not. We kind of through attrition, the CSA kind of just phased out.
It was a great thing to have during COVID.
Yes.
And where we could deliver to the person's front door, no contact. And they didn't have to go out. It was a delivery service, and it was a great thing to have right then. And now people are going back to the restaurants, and they're wanting to go look at their food a lot of times. So the CSA kind of, our customers that we had, they decided that they didn't want to do it anymore, and they wanted choice. And so I think it just kind of faded out for us, and that was a good thing. So we started the online market that people could buy whatever they wanted in whatever quantities they wanted, and they didn't get too much, which we maybe sometimes did in the CSA bags. So it's hard to judge. Not every family that is going to be getting something every week can use or wants to use the same amount of vegetables. And so I think it's better for the consumer to have some choices, and that's why we went with the online market. And we did some boxes and kind of CSA type boxes at Local Source, and that went over pretty well. It was a good subscription thing that it would go out every week, and people could opt out of it really easy. And as people are moving around more and going on vacation and visiting family, they want a couple of weeks out. And being in a CSA where you've signed a contract, that's harder to do, or you extend the season for them. But the online shopping seems to be doing really well for the same customers that we had.
It gives them lots of flexibility.
Yeah.
I think we saw that the farmer choice boxes were not really what the majority of the customers wanted. And I think that's a trend across the entire United States. I'm not saying that there aren't areas where it's maybe there's enough population and it's more popular, but here in our area, it doesn't seem to be a big option. And we have a really nice CSA through Seed and Harvest here.
Yes.
And
It's really good. Yeah.
there's no reason for us to compete or continue to have
We
that.
were small anyway.
Yeah.
Small potatoes.
If you continue to have a really good service that people like and it works well, then, we talk to them all the time. They work with us. They sell excess product on Local Source. They sell off-season on Local Source. So we have a good working relationship with them, and I think their CSA is a good option for people. There's a couple other smaller ones, but I think they all pretty much have the right size. We thought that with the Warwick County, Newburgh, East Side area that we would find a need in that region. I just don't think that it was there. People are just really want bananas and apples out of season.
Well, it's good that you're small enough that you can pivot and that you had the online market set up so that you could do that segue, and it was fairly seamless. I do see your point, though, with people wanting to see their food before they buy it, to see their produce and pick it out themselves. That, I would imagine, would be the same issue with the market as well. So
True.
You do have that behavior barrier, I suppose, to get over. I would also suppose that once someone orders from you and they can see that what they're getting is what they would pick out themselves or certainly comparable, then you get over that barrier as well.
It's a mindset that people have to realize that they're probably going to get a superior quality product if it's hand-selected and packed within days before they get it, if not the day of, for a lot of our products. Looking at what's coming in the door, which we do, we're down there a lot of Thursdays when everything's being aggregated for the orders, and some really nice-looking stuff. The produce, the baked goods, the meats, some really incredible selection. I think if people can just get past that, go into the grocery store selecting things and realize that this is not something that's set out on the produce shelf for days on end or a couple of weeks. It's something that just came out of the farm for you.
And I think there's some people that have shopped online, and it may be a product of COVID as well, that people shopped online and got it delivered, and it's the same kind of thing on this. You're going to have a few people that are really comfortable with online shopping and putting their credit card on there, and then you're going to have some people that are not so comfortable with that. So it's not for everybody. And, we're catering to those people that are like they were misfits or whatever, those delivery services. HelloFresh.
They're a good customer for us, for somebody that's used to doing that.
Right.
I think the only thing that we really have struggled to provide is more prepared food options for the people who want to get something that's more of a...
people that don't cook so much.
Yep, that don't cook.
Yeah.
That want something that's more prepared. So we do a lot of meat sales through the market, and it's worked out really, really well for our livestock meat producers.
You have several.
Quite a few. I think we're up to 10 now.
Yeah.
So for eggs and meat, there's a really large selection, and it helps,
a lot of choice.
A lot of choice. It helps them a lot because Frozen meat at farmers markets really doesn't work well. It's done, but it's not a great option. And we're able to keep things frozen or refrigerated until the customer comes to pick them up.
What's the geographic area that your vendors represent?
Let's see, the furthest west is Albion, Illinois.
Right.
And the furthest east would be...
Is that Jerry?
Probably Jerry or Fishers.
Fishers,
From
yes.
the Du Bois area.
St. Anthony.
So you have at least one that's over the state line. Is there any regulation that covers interstate food sales that you have to be aware of?
There's a lot of regulations. So, when we onboard a new producer, the first thing we do is go through any kind of products that they have and decide what regulations apply to their products. And then we're very diligent about going through, like where they have to get meat processed at. It can't be, I think there's 3 levels of meat processing. You can process for your own personal consumption or not to sell, and it's actually stamped not to resell. Then there's a stamp that's state certified, and then there's the USDA inspection. And our meat processors, whether they're in-state or out-of-state, have to have that USDA inspection. So they can't take it to a processor that doesn't do that. But the Illinois farm actually processes in Indiana.
Right.
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 I was thinking that was right. I don't
They
have a
have
great...
their egg board license for Indiana, and there are products that we can't sell of theirs. They do home-based vendor products, canning, some things like that we can't transfer across state lines, that you just can't do it.
Right. Let's talk about tomatoes a little bit, because we're just finishing up with tomato season, and we've got coolers or shelves full of tomatoes in various stages of ripening at the last of the season right now. You grow an astonishing variety of tomatoes at Beautiful Edibles. I'm always struck by how they look like, well, they are fruits, but I mean, they look like plums, and they look like little apricots, some of them. They're just so beautiful. Can you describe some of the tomatoes that you grow and maybe talk about your favorites? Let's have a little tomato conversation.
I think a lot of our favorites come from some crazy breeders that are breeding heirlooms with each other, and they're coming up with all these new and different varieties. And I think one of my favorites right now, there's a blonde boar that looks like a great white, the old great white tomato, if you've seen that. But it's 2 to 3 ounces. And
little.
yeah, so it's like you cut it in half and you eat half, and it's got great tomato flavor. There's a lot of those that are just about that size that we like to grow that you don't see a lot of places. They're soft-skinned, so you don't have to, your knife has to be really sharp, or you need a serrated knife to cut it. There's a few of those. Some of Mary's favorites are the Napa collection that we get. I would call them smooth. They have blue shoulders. There's one that's a rosé name and one that's a Chardonnay name, and they're just smoother tomatoes. And there's some with blue shoulders that it's just a blue flavor. They're really different. And I've never had anything like that until we got those amethyst cream cherries that you like so much.
Yeah, I love the names of them all, too.
Yeah.
The grower has a contest every year to help name a series of tomatoes that he's starting. We submitted a few names. We've never been chosen.
Never been chosen.
Yeah.
And where is your grower that you get a lot of these from?
Napa in California, and Wild Boar Farms. It's a really good farm, and Brad Gates is a really crazy breeder, and he's got some neat stuff coming out, and he'll put something out there that's maybe half done. Like you'll have several different kinds on one plant, and you get to choose what does best in your climate, and you save those seeds, and those become yours. They're your heirlooms now. And so we haven't done a great deal of seed savings, but we've started doing some. We did have some success this year on our seed saving this last year, and we planted them again this spring.
Can you describe what that process is to saving the seeds from a tomato?
There's a couple of things. Basically, you want them to ferment.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to break down that little mucus, coating on a seed. So that's the process that you go through. Some people do it by putting them in a jar and just letting them sit there and ferment. Other people do it by just letting the tomatoes sit and rot, and then they extract the seeds from them.
And then you got to rinse them and then dry them.
Yeah.
And then make sure they're good and dry, and then you put them in an envelope and keep them in a cool, dry place till you're ready to put them in the ground again. And we've done that with cucumbers. We did cucumbers this year that we saved. We're starting to branch out, and we went to an experimental farm network that is putting out what they're calling grecks of plants, where they'll breed all of these different landrace cucumbers or tomatoes or whatever it is they're trying to get, and all of the ones that have good qualities, and they breed them all together, and then they're trying to see what is going to come out of those. And so we got one of the grexes of a cucumber this year, really good pickling cucumber, and we saved the seeds from the best ones. Those are the ones that did really well for us. So we're going to try those again next year.
Do you think they'll grow true to their qualities?
Should, because they're an open pollinated. They're not a hybrid, so they haven't selected the two that they want to breed together. What we've done is we've selected the one that we liked, and so we should get exactly that because it's been open pollinated.
It may, it may not. It's a little bit of a crapshoot.
Yeah, because we know for a fact the tomatoes are a little unstable sometimes that we're getting on this. And we did get some beans this year that were very unstable. Half the crop was not what we thought it was going to be.
There were crosses of crosses of crosses.
Sure.
And
not a bad thing. I mean, they're still
they were different than what we expected.
Yeah.
Well, they were supposed to be bush beans.
Right, and they were pole.
And they were pole beans. So luckily we grew them where we had a place to put them up on our tomato trellises, and they did great. But if we would have planted them in the wrong spot, they would have.
Yeah, it could have been a mess.
Could have been a mess.
Well, sometimes I might throw a tomato into my compost, and it'll give me a volunteer the next year. I take it that's not a reliable thing to do, to plant a tomato and expect that you're going to get a viable tomato plant from it.
Yeah, a lot of the tomatoes you see out there are F1 hybrids where they'll breed a mother and another one together, and the expected outcome is the same every time. But the progeny of that will not be true to type. It could be from the mother, it could be from the other one. So those hybrids that you're going to see they're calling them high looms or those, you can't save seeds from those because they're bred between two specific plants that's really going to come out right just that one time. But some of the ones that we're getting are heirloom that have been bred for several years. I don't know what the definition of heirloom is, like 20 years or something like that, where it comes true to type again.
It's all interesting.
Yeah.
And we've said, I guess for about 4 or 5 years, that we realized that if we didn't follow the plant through from seed to fruit to seed again, then we weren't really studying our craft or learning our craft well. We needed to understand that. As much as we know we can't save seeds for everything that we have on the entire property, it has been kind of cool to do both flowers and some perennials, and so we're just taking time to do that. Maybe a little bit more of a relaxed feel about how we're doing it. It's not so much a pressure to buy and produce one thing or one kind of mainstream thing. I think we've relaxed off of that and seen that it's still something that people want, or at least we want.
Yeah.
The dried beans we don't sell to anyone. That's
something we do for ourselves.
Yeah, it's a placeholder. Whenever you have the tomato crops and you're doing lower and lean, we have a wasted space, I guess you could say, at the end of every row where something has to be low there. It can't be trellis too.
We've
So
done basil, we've done bush beans, we do
Right.
something.
To fill that space.
And then
Right. I
it's
see.
for us.
so the bean
Or if we have enough, it can go out.
and the bean rotation is a good one, so that we're doing something other than tomatoes and lettuce or brassicas, mustards, things like that.
Right.
So that's an option to let that rest or to rotate something else through. So the beans are kind of a personal thing. Green beans we can certainly sell as much as we want to, but
As much as we can grow, we can sell the green beans.
right.
Good market for that around here.
Yeah, but the dried beans were more of a personal thing, and then just to try it.
I would think you'd have to grow a lot of plants to get a sufficient number of dried beans to make it worth
Acres.
while.
Yeah.
Acres.
Yeah.
So you get a little handful.
Yeah. Well, there's still space on the farm where we could do that, but for right now, we were doing it in, like I said, these kind of wasted spaces. We didn't want to waste them.
Yeah.
So we wanted them to be productive. We found something to stick in there.
Yeah. You mentioned the flowers that you're growing, which is, I think, one of the first things you started growing at Beautiful Edibles, if I'm not mistaken. Back when I had Common Ground, I think that's the first thing that one of the first things that you showed me that you have. It's unusual, I think, to grow edible flowers. Can you talk a little bit about that part of the business and what made you go in that direction and what has been your experience with it?
I think kind of like our tomato philosophy, we have a lot of different tomatoes with shapes and sizes and colors and because you eat with your eyes first. And that's something that we thought, well, that appeals to us a lot when we're looking at what we want to eat and how we put our plates together and things like that. And what we like to see at a restaurant. Coming from a landscaping background, I always like to see things that were flowering all different times of the year. And so you would have to work out a plan that has all of these different things that are going to bloom different times of year in whatever colors you want. And when we started into doing gardening, it was just kind of a natural progression that we tried to get flowers into our gardening landscape because it was pretty to us. And then we thought, well, if we're going to do that, what's the purpose? Well, there are some plants that we grow that are magnets for bugs, so they get on these and they don't go to whatever vegetables I'm growing. There are some that repel insects that we plant in combination with other vegetables. And then there are those that we thought, well, let's try looking at edible flowers. And there was what is the name of that place over in Ohio that we just looked at and said, oh man, this is great. We want to raise things just like that.
You would put me on the spot.
I can't remember it.
The chef
Garden?
might be.
Might be.
Farmer John in
Yeah,
the
Farmer
overalls
John.
with the red bow tie.
Yeah.
I can picture him. So we had found them online and we said, wouldn't it be great to be this place where chefs get to come to retreats and have all of this experimental edible flowers and baby vegetables and things like that, and they get to go in this kitchen and just play.
Yeah, this is a place that exists.
Yeah, this is a place
It's a real
that
place
exists.
that exists, and they ship all over the world. Just a crazy.
So we wanted to do
selection.
that in a small way.
Yeah,
We got a small place, and we wanted our gardens to be beautiful. That's one of the things that we really tried to do was do all these combination plantings with plants you can eat just about every part of. And one of the big parts was the flowers. And you don't see a lot of people eating the flowers. We eat the kale flowers. We let the kale grow into these pretty little yellow flowers that are really fantastic flavor, and they taste really good and they look really good. And so kind of by accident, some of the things we let grow on, or it got really hot and they bolted. Mustard flowers, fantastic flavor on mustard flowers. It tastes just like mustard, but it's got that mustard bite, but it's a sweet bite at the end of it. And just trying things that we hadn't tried before, and it worked into, hey, we should try to sell some of these. And it's worked out well with bartenders that want to have a little, beautiful thing on the side of the drink. And you see on Instagrams just littered with edible flowers all over it in the drinks and on the sides of plates. And we found some people that were really interested in doing that on every single plate they put out. Charissa Perkins at Copper House.
Great fan.
Great fan of.
Great supporter.
Yeah. She gets flowers every week and puts them on all the plates and on all the desserts. It's been a really good relationship, and she's helped us through this, deciding what plants to grow that are going to be really good and taste good and look good on the plate and hold up well. And
yeah, I think what we've seen is we're not in an urban area where we can charge top dollar for the edible flowers, but we did see that it was a service that was missing, and it was something that we could fill, and we can fill it pretty easily. And we took on the same role with it as we did with the tomatoes and the lettuce. Once we started looking at what our production could be, they would receive a product ramping up from the spring all the way through the summer into the fall, maybe the first of winter. It just depends on what we can do as far as supplemental lighting and indoor location so things don't freeze. But we were able to consistently provide a product on a weekly basis.
A subscription.
For our wholesale customers. That is the thing that makes you invaluable to a chef or a mixologist or baker, is that they know that they can consistently get the same product over and over again. And we made it an affordable product. We've looked at the numbers on this, and it's actually a pretty good little moneymaker for something that we just plant in between the other crops, and then we go out and harvest jars. I don't know that you've ever been there on harvest days, but we're averaging somewhere between 15 and 17 jars a week during the high season.
You're talking
Little
glass
pint jars.
Pint basin jars.
And we went to that as a sustainable method. That was something that Charissa and ourselves, we partnered on it, came up with the concept of having the glass mason jars that we would deliver product in. They would be washed in the bar area and set back out for us to pick up the next time we came back. And that way we were recycling those glass jars. We weren't using any plastic materials, and they actually hold up much better in an insulated glass jar in a cooler than they would in plastic, paper, or just laying out on a paper towel. So the shelf life became so much better, and we're actually seeing where things that they could get through a distributor would be toast within 2 or 3 days. Some of our product is
because they traveled.
So some of our product is lasting 5 to 7 days in the cooler and on the bar back or someplace like that.
And you often pick these the day that you deliver them. So
Absolutely.
they are as fresh as one could get.
Yeah.
They used to have a outside space is when we first started. Everything was outside our tunnels, and we thought we had to do all the big dollar crops inside the tunnels. We now keep the flowers in the tunnels and intercropped with the tomatoes so that we can pick them if it's raining. If we have sleet or snow, they're still good up until we get those really hard freezes. There's a lot of these things that will do fine until we get down into the 30s.
And begonias. I love them. They make such a pretty thing on a plate in pink and red colors, and they taste like a sweet tart. It's got a little kind of pop to it, that kind of a succulent bite, and it has that juice that goes into your mouth, and it's a sweet tart.
I think we started leaning a lot towards palatable flavored edible flowers. So
Nasturtiums did not go over big.
No, nasturtiums are you see them a lot in photo shoots and for decorations, but they have a very strong odor and flavor, and so they weren't so popular, especially if
Kind of
you're
like horseradish.
yeah, if you're looking at desserts, which is a lot of the pairing or drinks. A nasturtium may look gorgeous, but it tastes really strong, so it's not always the flavor that you're looking for. And the begonias that we get specifically are grown so that they have nothing on them. They're just
No
all of our
spray at
flowers,
all.
no spray. Rainwater is all they're going to get.
We're talking about restaurants, so let's continue that subject just a little bit more. A fair number of restaurants use some local ingredients, but oftentimes they don't necessarily put that source information on their menus, so the diners don't necessarily know what farms are producing the food that's on the plates. So I thought maybe we could enlighten them, those diners. What restaurants are among your customers this season? We've mentioned Copper House.
Pangea. Pangea was one of our first customers that we sold tomatoes to. They get tomatoes and mushrooms. They get mushrooms twice a week, so they're fresh. And if you order the 3 fungi pizza, that's our mushrooms. And they get a 10-pound box of tomatoes every week. And this last week was the last week up for tomatoes for them. And Andy Wood, he's working at Chimmick's Kitchen. I think it's called Belly of the Wolf, that they're doing there. We've been a friend of Andy's for a long time and
Followed him around
at several different
restaurants.
places, and he's doing a great job there. They've got some good clientele, and he's doing some creative things there with our products. Really loves our celery, which we don't sell much of.
That's an interesting statement. Really loves our celery, because celery is one of those kind of also-ran vegetables.
Yeah.
That goes in other things, but you don't think of it as something that you would develop a fondness for.
One of the things about the celery we grow is it's not blanched, so it's a hardy celery. So
I don't think listeners might not know what that refers to.
So we don't wrap it to keep. So the celery that you get in the store is kind of a light green. This is a dark green. It's a sturdier celery. It's got a
lot of flavor.
A lot of flavor, fiber to it. But this is actually a celery that's supposed to be
Close to stringless.
Close to stringless. Not exactly stringless, but pretty close to stringless. And we sell it with the leaves on it. The leaves kind of have a parsley-like taste, not so much celery. They're more of an intense taste. So Andy has used it for cooking for the celery flavor, but also he's taking the leaves and he's making purees and all kinds of cool sauces that you taste them and you're like, I know what that taste is.
Yeah.
But it's just that intense flavor that you can't quite put your finger on what it is, but it tastes fantastic.
It's got a little, if you just take it out of the field and take a crunch out of it, it's a little bit salty, a little bit of a minerally flavor. And I just had never had celery like it before this variety that we're growing. And let's see, Butcher and Barrels. And
one of our newest clients is Butcher and Barrel in Huntingburg.
Yeah, they're brand new.
Brand new.
Brand new.
A month
just
old,
opened
maybe?
just
Yeah.
a month ago. And Josh Emmons is the chef there. Josh is just a big fan of local food. He's made probably a pretty intense effort to try to have a lot of locally sourced products, meat, cheeses, other things that he's doing there. Just really some incredible things. He actually developed a baker for their rolls that are served in the restaurant. Got a friend to start baking and turned him
Oh,
into,
I need bread.
yeah, I need bread.
He's right around the corner, isn't
Right.
he? He's got
Yeah.
his
In Huntingburg.
at least his retail space.
His
Right.
retail
Yeah.
space. And Ryan's doing some pretty wild stuff with he's used our lion's mane mushroom to make some lion's mane lemon raviolis.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Done some sandwiches with those. So some incredible things happening up there in that DuBois area.
Well, I don't want to leave anybody out. Is there any other?
Second language uses our flowers.
We have a couple of resell accounts, and those kind of come and go. We've worked with Paradise Organics in Newburgh, Old Fashioned Butcher Shop, and then Grounded in...
Cleo's. We forgot Cleo's.
Yeah, Cleo's does our mushrooms every week. She's a little bakery down in Newburgh.
Mm-hmm.
You can always get a quiche, a mushroom quiche.
And those are yours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are our mushrooms.
Those are ours.
She was part of our CSA.
Yes.
And so we've been friends for a good amount of time, and she has a subscription where she gets mushrooms every week.
And then Grounded Health Food Store in Jasper has been a steady customer of ours since we lost our natural food market here in Evansville. So we have to give them a shout out.
They're a good customer.
They're a great customer, and they keep our dried mushrooms in stock since we started developing that product.
I'm wondering, inflation has been on everybody's mind for the past couple of years, and I'm wondering if you're hearing or seeing anything from your customers, how inflation is impacting their business and what you've had to do maybe on the farm to respond to that.
So right after COVID, I think we took 4 hits on supplies with supply increases, and we did not raise prices for the first year. And after the 4th price increase on some of our supplies, we said we have to do something on the price increase. And we have not raised our price again since then. We've just found creative ways to save money on whatever our supplies were or time. And then just in general, I guess, things have worked out as far as labor. I think that we see that our accounts are not pressuring us to be the cheapest. I think that they like the quality of the product. They see that it lasts longer. So I don't think that I've never felt like any of our customers are trying to get us to lower our prices. In fact, they usually have these conversations with us about how they really appreciate that they think that they're getting a good value. Because when they're saying that they get stuff in from the distributors, it's maybe not of such great quality that they have to complain about. And they will, because they're paying a lot of money for that. And they are watching their bottom line. And there have been some rough times, especially during the summer months, because we see typically late July, most of August, there's a lot of people traveling that normally go out and spend a lot of money on food around the area that are no longer.
They're elsewhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that is the month when we see probably the hardest hit for a lot of our restaurant or wholesale customers. So this year end of August, we had a ton of tomatoes. There weren't any restaurants that really wanted extra tomatoes because they were all watching their bottom line. We were able to partner with Evansville Countryside Orchard. They have a small vegetable garden there. They had a lot of cherry tomatoes coming out of the field. We both had sold to the Warwick County School Corporation, called them up, asked them, hey, would you be willing to do a week or two of cherry tomatoes for the schools? And they were more than happy to order all of our excess cherry tomatoes that we had when we were at like that overproduction time period.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool that we have that relationship and we're able to just talk to them about that. Because I think Countryside had been getting apples to them as they came back to school. They've been doing like a snack size apple.
Let's talk about what you do at Local Source. As you were saying, it's an aggregation and distribution process with your farmers market. So I think of it kind of from the customer service point of view, and that you have these two groups of customers that you have to provide service to, your vendors and your purchasers. And they don't necessarily overlap, not necessarily the same people, and they need different things from you. That's a juggle.
It is. And I think we have a passion for helping farmers, whether it's an established farmer or a new farmer. I mean, I worked with the Partners in Food and Farming to mentor someone last season. And I see this as, it's just something that we need to do to honor being a farmer, as we need to mentor other people in the field. We don't see it as competition. We see it as, it's like the tide coming in. Everyone gets raised up. if we all work together, we all raise up together. So that's some of the work that we're doing, and it's kind of cool because we're seeing people that maybe they only have one thing this year, and we help them get that one product on the market and help them find a way to get out there and get known to customers. And then, it could help them with their farm stand, their agritourism, the ability to be able to say that they could scale. And we've made it so easy for them to be able to get their product out there on the market without a lot of overhead. And we've walked them through that process. So the same can be said of our customers, because we have to walk them through, this is how you could have local product on your menu during the year if you're willing to have like a weekly soup, seasonal menu items, features, but you have to get them to be able to commit to that, not to be like a franchise where they always have the same product every day of the week.
And you got to have adventurous eaters.
Yes.
That want to come and buy that. And so you got to have an adventurous chef that's going to be able to provide those things that are a little bit out of the ordinary or special or for a short amount of time. But I think one of the things that you were asking was on the aggregation and distribution, we got some great people helping us. We got Corey that comes in, and so it's two different people that do the aggregation and the distribution, and they have different personalities. And Corey does great bringing in everything. He's very organized. He is very good with the farmers. He communicates well with them, and gets everything and puts it where it needs to be, whether it's cold or room temperature or frozen, and keeps it fresh, ready for getting things put into bags for all of the distribution that happens in the afternoon. And then he and Abby put everything into the bags and, again, keep them cold or frozen or room temperature. And then they're ready for people to come get at noon. And people come and get them, and Abby gives them out. You might be able to say that better than me, a lot better than me.
We're very fortunate that we have two people that are flexible enough with their schedules to give us this one day a week,
right?
That they help, and it's not.
And they've both been involved with food,
right,
in the past. Corey worked at Countryside, and Abby's been a cook and worked at several restaurants that we provide to, and I think she's at Sauced right now doing prep work. But Abby and Corey have done a really great job for us.
I think they've been in place just a little over a year.
Yeah.
So that's worked out really well. I think Abby's been there longer. So we could not do this without having them in place. They're very key to that, and we'd like to see them take on a little bit stronger roles. Abby's been able to help us this year because we do coordinate product coming from the Wednesday farmers market downtown over to local source so that people don't have to make a second trip. If they're down there on Wednesday, they can send product back over to local source and not have to come on Thursday mornings. And Abby helped us with that coordination this year. It's been really, we were doing it, and then we realized, hey, let's just ask. So I think we have to give props to our partners too, because a lot of the overall, just the ideas, and when there's tough decisions to make, when things have been challenging, our partners and the producers have just stepped up and helped us in just amazing ways, especially with the cold storage.
Oh, man.
Because when we said we have 3 very large, very heavy
big units,
cold storage units that we can get for little amount of money, how do we do this? And within 2 days, we had all the moving equipment, and all of our partners were there. Scott Anderson, Tim and Christy Schultz were there helped us get everything moved in place.
Jerry Steckler.
Jerry Steckler was there with us. It was an
Jim
incredible...
Lockery.
Jim Lockery was there, and it was an incredible effort to get those all inside. And I can't say enough about that. Scott's is so good about every week getting all of the producers their checks out on a regular basis every week. So when someone sells through our market, they're not waiting 30 days to get their money.
They get it.
They get their money
next week.
So
that's the benefit of being small.
Yeah.
Right.
Nice.
So we did it for the farmers or the producers, and we feel like we've really hit the mark on that.
Was this part of the plan from the beginning when you got started? Did you think it was going to be somewhat networking and introducing farmers to one another and mentoring and so forth? Or has that kind of sprung from just doing the work? Was it part of the plan, I guess I'm asking, or was there a plan?
It's more work than the plan was.
Yeah, I was going to say, for several years, we kicked around being a cooperative. I mean, and that was what we said. How can we have a co-op?
And we were going to start wholesale.
Right.
We were going to do wholesale first.
And that was kind of the original plan. The retail came because we'd lost markets and we needed it. So the need was greater than the original concept. So we pivoted.
And people wanted retail, and people wanted those customers that were at Albert's and at Market Wagon, and it's that group of people that helped us get started. The vendors, the producers that were on selling to those people, and also the customers. So it's the same group of people. There's a few that have, dropped out here and there, but by and large, it's been that same group of people that, hey, we want to sell local and we want to buy local.
But I'm also thinking of farms like Earthrise and Moonlight Hollow, where you've provided advice and guidance. And these are both young farm families just getting started in market gardening or whatever it is they're producing. And you guys have provided, Local Source has provided that opportunity for them as well.
Yeah, I think it's amazing when you see those relationships happening. Probably the most, I guess, proud, kind of like a mother proud. I told Roger, downtown Evansville sponsored these night markets. And when I see, these newer farmers that you're introducing them to other, established farmers or people who have been at farmers markets for years and years, and you're introducing them, and then they're asking questions and giving advice.
Yeah.
You see those things happening, those kind of relationships building, and you realize you just brought them into this community where maybe they didn't think they belonged.
You're right. And there's a lot of hesitancy the first time you set out to do something. You don't know what you're doing. You don't even know how to set up your table.
Right.
I'm going to ask you one last question, and it's a little more of a personal question, and you can answer it how you want. But I know you guys, in addition to running your farm and running Local Source, you've got the same daily responsibilities that everybody has, and you're raising a teenager, and you're caring for an elder in your family. You're part of, the sandwich generation. When you grow food for your livelihood, there's no weekends off. All of your responsibilities require daily attention. So I'm wondering where you find your places of rest.
We take small breaks. I thought about this. So one of the things that's become kind of a routine for us is in the mornings, Roger likes to do online puzzles. A lot of times I'll join him in helping him figure out crossword clues. So the small times, so we're not...
Bits and bytes. Yeah,
we're not early morning, try to get out there and get going right away. I think we've learned to have a routine of you're usually cooking breakfast every morning. So it's a little slower start. And then lunch or mid-afternoon, we'll take a siesta break again sometimes. Sometimes we sleep, sometimes we don't. But we're learning to have that pace because this is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah. Well, hats off to you, and I'm so glad that you were able to come in today and talk again, and we'll get an update again in the future on how you're doing, both on the farm and with Local Source. Roger and Mary Winstead, thanks.
Thank you.
Food From Here is brought to you by Swerka and More, empowering seniors in our community to live safely and independently in their own homes. Learn more at swerka.org. And that's the show for today, and it's a wrap for this season of Food From Here. We'll be taking a break for the holidays, which are fast approaching. In a short 6 weeks, it'll be a whole new year. Remember, if you have an idea for a guest or a local food issue you'd like us to explore, now's the time to let me know. Send an email with your suggestions to foodfromhere@wnin.org. Food From Here is produced at Tri-State Public Media in Evansville, Indiana, home of WNIN-FM and WNIN-PBS. Thanks to Swerka and More for their sponsorship, and to you for your support of public media. I'm Peggy Pirro. Happy holidays.